Hello! If you want to keep an accurate track on your weight loss or body fat changes, then it's very important that we use a reliable method, a repeatable method of measuring. Quite often I'll have people come to me quite upset because they feel like they've put on weight or they've gained body fat. And when you ask, how have you been tracking this? They say, oh, well, I think I look different. And whilst your visual appearance is important, it doesn't provide a lot of information as to potentially why you look, in your opinion, different. So an accurate tracking measure will, which I'm going to describe in a second, will allow us to delve a little deeper and figure out why that might be. And that allows us to give you better solutions. So whether it's a tweak to your diet or your exercise, or whether it's something to do with your hydration, or it's a particular fluctuation at the time of the month because of hormones. These things are important and we can get to the bottom of them, avoid a lot of unnecessary worry with some simple tracking tools. So what I'm going to do in this quick video is demonstrate how to accurately track with a tape measure and a set of scales. So, first bit. For the tape measure to be repeatable, we need to be measuring in the same place. So we need some sort of anatomy marker point that isn't going to change. Now I suggest you use your bony anatomy for this, because unless you have something pretty terrible happen to you, that's not going to change. So for example, when we are measuring waist circumference, excuse the flashing, what we're looking for are the iliac crests. So you can palpate around the top of your hips and you'll feel where there is a little ridge, a little knob of bone right up on top of the hip. What you're going to do is you're going to measure 2 inches exactly up from that point. You can mark this with a pen if you want to be super accurate, and I would recommend that you do, just a little wash-off pen or something. Put a little mark at the 2-inch point, and from here we measure around the waist. Now the other thing that comes into play when you're measuring around the waist is whether you've got clothes on or not. Clearly, for accuracy, we want to get rid of any clothing, so that's why I'm putting my t-shirt up in the video. The next thing is that when you're measuring around your waist, breathing will affect this. As I breathe in, the tape measure expands, and as I breathe out, it reduces. Now, I would suggest that you measure both inhaled and exhaled, biggest and smallest, and average the two. This is going to provide consistency across your reporting, and consistency is the #1 thing that we're looking for. So that's how you do an accurate waist measurement. You find your iliac crest 2 inches above that point and measure around what is your true waist. Okay? For most people, the waist is their #1 concern. However, it's also a good idea to do a couple of additional measures so that you can be sure that if it's body fat, that you're losing body fat from across the body, and maybe it's not just hanging around on your stomach, or you've not lost from your arms or legs but not on your tummy, these sorts of things. So, to measure, the next most important point for most people is around the thighs. What I would suggest here is you go back to that iliac crest. You put one end of the tape measure on the iliac crest, on the very peak of it, not over the top or underneath, but right on the peak. You then take the tape measure down the front of your thigh to the topmost border of your kneecap. For me, that's 17 inches, because I've got little legs. 17 inches divided by 2 is 8.5 inches. So I'm looking at the 8.5 inch point on the tape measure. I'm pinpointing that, again on the skin, not over any clothes, and I'm going to measure the circumference of my thigh at the halfway point. Now, I'm doing this rather awkwardly with my leg held in the air because I've got to get it in camera shot. However, I would recommend you do this sat down, because whether you're stood or sat is going to have an influence on how tight the muscles in your leg are, how much, and that could influence this 1/2 inch or so either way. Which, if you're tracking, 1/2 inch could make a big difference. That could look like it's gone up or down significantly in view of your trend, couldn't it? So always do this in the same postural position. So if I was to repeat this, I'd do it in the same standing up awkward position. Okay, so I've measured all the way around at the halfway point of my thigh, 21.5. I need to get back to doing some leg day exercises. You repeat the same process for arms if you wish. Now, at the top of your shoulder, you will feel your collarbone. Your collarbone at the far end of it terminates in this bony little knob up here. When you find that, place the end of the tape measure there. Run it down your arm to your elbow. And at the elbow, I am measuring, this is slightly awkward, but you could always use a mirror if you were doing this, 14 inches. Apparently I've got even littler arms than my legs. So at the 7-inch point, that's my halfway point, isn't it? So 7 inches, right about there. Get the clothing out of the way, mark it up or have someone help you with this, and then around your arm at the halfway point, you measure that up in a relaxed position, so no making muscles, relaxed position, and that's going to let you know your arm circumference. Okay? So with a couple of key measurements like that, thigh, waist and arm circumference, you're going to get a pretty reasonable idea of whether you are gaining or losing overall size. And if you use the scales appropriately, you'll know whether that size is related to your weight as well, won't you? So that provides us with a pretty accurate picture. Now, a note on using scales. Your scale weight is influenced by a number of things, such as your hydration status, how much water your body is holding onto. Your hydration status can be influenced by the ambient temperature. So there's not a lot we can do about that, but potentially measuring at the same time of day, maybe early in the morning before the day's had a chance to heat up, that might stabilise that number as much as possible. The other thing is that, have you just been to the toilet to do a number 2? Because if you have, that could influence it. Not by an awful lot, but sometimes it's enough combined with a few other things to throw out the look of your trend. So try and do these measurements at the same time of day, preferably the same day of the week. Now, I wouldn't necessarily advocate weighing every day, but if we're keeping a tab on things, then every week sounds sensible to me. So pick the same day of the week, because most people will find that their weekend eating habits and activity habits are not as good as their weekday habits, because, you know, we're busier during the week, we don't have time to eat so much. So most people will find that they are heaviest on Monday morning after a weekend of relaxing and eating, and they are lightest on Friday morning. So if you're comparing a Friday to a Monday measure, you're going to go, oh my God, I've gained weight this week. No, you haven't, because by Friday that'll come back off again. So always use the same day of the week and as close as possible to the same time of day, so that it's not influenced by your diet or bathroom or whatever other habits. Okay? So those are my top tips for keeping track of your weight and size if you're concerned about those things. I'm going to be putting together a nice handy resource that you can print off, that you can keep tabs on these things if you wish, and I'll post this all up together so it's easy for you to find. I hope that helps. Bye-bye.